Hey everybody, it's Chad Warren here at the Adventurer Channel. Hope you're well. Today I want to focus on Steve Outtrim, who I haven't met. Just the other day, I was interested in his video debunking Jan Irvin or defending himself against accusations by Jan Jan Irving. Not trying to be a jerk, trying to get it right. Uh, Jan Irvin. That Jan accuses everybody of being a CIA agent. And the test appears to be you either accept Jan's role as the inquisitor, the grand inquisitor of the internet, the sole human able to use logic via the trivium method that he promotes, or you are a left-hand path Luciferian. Obviously, I'm a left-hand path Luciferian for wearing this cap from the Lost 40 local brewery here in Little Rock, Arkansas. I uh, I admit I did attend Harvest Fest. Obviously, pagan. Obviously, it's one shade away from roasting children in a human sacrifice to the calf god Baal. Uh, Reading books is of the devil. Uh, I mean, just as kind of a big picture philosophical aside, or like, oh, mind control, is that in addition to, yeah, definitely there are secret societies. There are people who have an intent to make to degrade humanity, right? That's just the haves versus the have-nots. Those who think they're better than the rest of us, that use the rest of us as their batteries to fuel their empires based on various addictions to the internet, to coffee, to information, whatever. But beyond that level of conscious tyranny is just, the relation between what, if anything, is spirit versus material. Just to live life itself is obviously a test. And I think it's a test like in the movie Star Trek. Is it 2? The Wrath of Khan? Is that the one where uh, William Shatner reprises his role as Captain Kirk, and he is helping a new crew for a new Starship Enterprise to simulate the unwinnable situation known as the Kobayashi Maru before its maiden voyage. And life is an impossible game. Everybody physically dies, so you know it's just inherent in life itself. This conspiracy, if you want to call it that, to test people through trauma. It didn't. The CIA didn't invent that. Yes, there is mind control. Yes, there is MK Ultra, but I think we should be more concerned. Like, if we want to look at organized tyranny in the world, then we need to also look inwardly and see our own self-sabotaging behavior, which is essentially just, you know, to not have the will to go on living because it's such a pain in the butt, right? And so it really is that simple. You either are focusing on the sunny side of life to be positive or not, because they're both there and they're both related. And there's a lot of being critical of Yan here, and I really don't want that to be personal. I do want to use my brief interaction with him as an example, as a cautionary tale for all of us. You know, the purpose of my channel, the Adventurer channel, is for us to recognize our problems, like just speaking to the truth seeker activist community, right? Like, forget about how nobody cares about the 5G, you know, the weaponized internet that is vibrating our cells and able to mind control us or cause various forms of cancer. I mean, we can't even organize anything within our own group to resist that. So what does it even matter? I sure understand why people don't want to be exposed to this information, because everybody is going to encounter something, you know, like topics of pedophilia and satanic ritual abuse. I mean, who other than people that have been damaged by that would even have the chutzpah to look into that darkness? Because just looking into the evil that we do, people, traumatizes us. So I sure understand people just wanting to watch the Super Bowl and go to Disneyland and eat a Happy Meal. All right, so there's enough general point there, is that you know, we all have behavior problems, and that's as important to address as any all-encompassing conspiracy of Satanism or Luciferians or whatever. So I heard about Steve Outtrim from his association with Jan Irvin, and Jan Irvin really is one of these people, kind of like Freeman Fly, that has been the grandfather of alternative media on the internet. That is a fact. Whether I like his behavior or not, both of those people understood the value of alternative media. Freeman, back when it was public access television that is provided by the cable companies in the 90s. And then Jan Irvin, he got all into, he's the grandfather of why we're talking about DMT and ayahuasca outside of the academic community. And of course that links to the popular news of the day with, I'm blanking out, Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, and their very interesting interview yesterday where old crazy horse Alex Jones comes on. And that's a funny dynamic, because I usually can't stand Joe Rogan's style of, like, I mean, he just seems like a sensual gatekeeper. I hate this, I don't know what you call this behavior that like more normal people do, where they're like, okay, what you're talking about is beyond my frame of reference, so I can't even see what you're talking about. And then, like, that's what I did, like Alex Jones going, no, you know exactly what I'm talking, you know all about this. Totally. Obviously he's very educated about all this. It's so dumb. It's not dumb in the sense that I assume that what Joe Rogan is doing is, whether he's conscious of it or not, is he's compelling more normal, you know, sports jocks and military types and whatever to consider far out ideas by representing the like physical aspects of arguing, like a debate. He's using, you know, wrestling is very similar to debate, right? You got what's the military guy that was a wrestler back in the day? Donald Rumsfeld. Uh, there are known knowns and known unknowns, right? Then you got like Bill Clinton. That depends on what the definition of is. So that part about off the cuff, can you represent your point or represent any role that you want to play, acting, live action role playing, that kind of a thing. So it was neat to see Joe try to calm Alex down. And what I liked about the interview is that Alex is saying, "Hey, could you imagine being me?" And I'm hearing these stories about my dad being connected to intelligence and him trying to fight this fight against evil from within the system, and hearing about these far out concepts as a child. Obviously, that affected him. And then, just the kind of traumatic having your parents divorced is, like, in my mind, a huge part of my character, where my distrust of the establishment comes from. So that's a very understandable dynamic between more normal folk that are like, hey, I have a successful job. I feel good about the way things are, right? Versus somebody that doesn't feel that they fit in. So that's kind of unanswerable fundamental disagreement that becomes a part of our sense of the world around us and sense of our personal identity. All right, so that was trying to connect Steve Outtrim talking about his role as a computer application designer within Silicon Valley, and then of course you have the Burning Man Festival, which is a way for those folks to lighten up and party through the use of psychedelic drugs and music festivals. And I'm trying to learn from all this to help myself and the next generation, focus on what are the solutions, because we've got too much criticism. The criticism is breaking everything down, right? Now we need field agents. My goal is to develop a public intelligence agency, right? That's what we're doing by watching this alternative media, right? It's either infotainment, where we don't do anything with it, it's just another addiction, right? Or we're figuring out, how can I impact reality as a defense from Agenda 21, saying, you don't get to have any kids, you don't get to eat meat, you don't get to pass go because the sky is falling because of humans, versus I think that an idea like the mini ice age over at Adapt 2030 is more of a possible outcome myself. A pattern that happens every 400 years perhaps, or whatever. But obviously all of this information, like the info war that Alex Jones is correct to say, is used against us. We're all still wallowing in controlled opposition, right? I don't have to prove that all these people are CIA agents. I merely have to show, what have we done as the subscribers to this information. What we've done is somehow ensured that Alex Jones makes $54 million a year or something, or I don't know. Is that how much he? Is it a year? Is that no? It can't be. That's how much he's worth total, or something like that. We put money in his pocket, and all he did was pick Donald Trump, which, I'm upset at my fellow truth seekers. Like, really? You know what I mean? All right. So, Steve Outtrim, what I've liked about him is that he's calm. He's a professional. Because this world of the alt-right or conspiracy theory researchers or whatever is full of autism. I'm an only child. I don't enjoy working around people, and we have a lot of good reason to not want to be around people, but I recognize as much as I value protecting myself from drug abuse and all this scammery at fast food and everything coming at you, you can't just hide out in your hut. You have the most power that we have is to strengthen the species health of our relationship with others. Giving to the total human group, right? That is my answer to the question of what do you do about communitarianism, which is this whole how the money people, they go and infiltrate, you got AIPAC, the Israeli lobby dominates the U.S. Congress. All of our money funds Israel. All this money goes to NASA. What do we have to show for it? I like science, but science has been turned into a church of, and all of these are using an idea, but then this is where that energy gets directed, not to help us. Okay? So that's how I heard about Steve, is through Jan Irvin. And then I was very influenced by Jan, because then he goes on to disavow the psychedelic experience, to apologize for him. He's the reason why you've heard of Terence McKenna on the internet. Okay? And then he flips over and says, this is all a CIA MK Ultra Timothy Leary scam, right? Which is a legitimate thing to do. It's a learning process. That's what the internet does, is that it super speeds up, defeating the incorrect information we got from our family, friends, and public school system. But then I would direct you to Josh Reeves, who shows that in his Spellcaster series that the Scientologists promote None Dare Call It a Conspiracy, and they have this very controlled reading list, that you cannot look at this information, you can look at this information. So yes, there is a reason why mind control agents want us to be attracted to the mystery of Freemasonry and secret societies, for the same reason with the drugs. It's because more people than not are going to fail in developing the discipline in order to make the use of the liberal arts. Okay, not just the trivium, the classical liberal arts of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, right, which is the fundaments of critical thinking. But today we have psychedelics as an obligatory thing. And I look back on my use of acid, and one time I did DMT. I would be lying to not cherish that experience, even if I no longer have interest in that. I barely have interest in using weed because of the cost of it. And, I already have trouble with being productive from my interest translating into an income. And that's something that you learn about the classical liberal arts, is you don't make money off of that. That is a tool that you apply, right? And then once you start, the quadrivium gets into music, astronomy, math, right? Like, then you start focusing in the real world, this conscious critical thinking. Okay, so that's a big problem that we as these alternative media producers have. So I'm trying to somehow deal with the big picture of, like, sharing a little bit of information about these different figures that I feel are key, but then more important, of how do we cooperate instead of having 100 million channels talking about chemtrails. Let's just find the best one and put the money in the focus and the real world activism of posters and talking with people. All right, so here's a little bit of Steve Outtrim talking about the Burning Man festival and how he too feels that it is, a controlled opposition group, even though he very much enjoys his participation in the experience. And that is a big point, right? It's like, if you want to get past the left or right paradigm, or understanding that everything is connected, that is a fact, right? You can't, that's the problem with this puritanical Jan Irvin Christian point of view, is that he's trying to label anything outside of his own view as garbage. And that's just not, you know what I mean? You're hurting yourself and others by that type of behavior, just as much as we do need to protect against mental and physical viruses. I was involved with the local version of that, the Flux festivals, more because I was helping somebody video the event for their production company. And my point of view was like, hey, I'm glad I checked this out, because I felt that it was open enough that it was genuinely intending for people to bring their thing, whatever it is, to it. Okay? So, and that is what I experienced from my participation in the Occupy movement, which I knew to be controlled opposition. There were local leaders that said that they were flown to Madison Avenue, the advertising capital of the United States, to learn leadership strategies up in a corporate skyscraper, which blows my mind that doesn't seem like a conflict of interest to them or to me. But they use the Delphi technique, where anytime people tried to organize an action, they would make sure, we're not here to actually do anything. I mean, it was practically what they said. They wanted to stop any actual actions and outcomes to occur. And then I one time, for a short time, had a meetup group for Infowars, and it frustrated me because I had all these ideas that I wanted to do, and I more really wanted to get other people's ideas. That's what my interest is in. What do we want to do? Let's brainstorm. Let's take action. What's the energy between us that becomes the point of direction that we can go? And all they wanted to do, hey, the Ron Paul group's across the street today. let's go over there, okay. And then we all went over there, and then immediately what happened was the director of the Ron Paul group goes, hey, we were told by Ron Paul himself not to let the Infowar people, the 9/11 people, come over and be connected with us. And I was like, this is all at the library. And I was like, wow, what a clusterfunk. You know what I mean? So anyway, my point is that the good thing about these controlled opposition groups is that the dark forces have already done the marketing. That's the biggest prize in this whole thing, is how do you find the people that want to hear your message and would work with you? Well, they've already done it when they had these events like that. So I have lifelong friends, right, that I'm very glad that I know, that think differently than me, and we've had definite fallings out and coming back together again events, and that's huge, right? I mean, this camper I am in is because of somebody I met through the Occupy movement. And as kind of crazy as that person may behave at one time, well, he looked on cheap lands and found some land for $700, and this camper was $1,200, and then he's selling it to me at a profit of $3,600. That's a win-win to me, right? I pay $300 for a year and I get to live here. So these are the kind of things I'm trying to bring to the surface, this reality between our little personal life and this big picture, and practical ways to be a threat to the banking gangsters, just for our survival, our defense. Okay.
But they all have an artistic bent.
This guy's Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead.
Is, while entertaining, I've never caught any virginal sacrifices.
Asked whether or not he's a CIA agent.
Kind of remotely like that. He's had some interesting times up there.
Asked if he's attended Bohemian. Oh, he has, admitting he attended the Bohemian Grove.
Club, and I enjoy the chance, given my mindset, my Welsh.
Let's find a piece with Steve here. Ogden.
Where no man has been before. And it's also the birth of the Galactic Federation. And the Galactic Federation is very similar to the United Nations. I mean, they basically have the same kind of idea, and it just happens to be the same kind of idea as H.G. Wells and the New World Order and the globalists and the Illuminati as well.
I like that
brain.
Well,
I should mention that I was close friends with George Clayton
whatever
Johnson
that technology is Jan uses to
25 years
show the relations
and he died in the last
key
year,
players.
But George Clayton Johnson was even on the podcast early on, and he co-wrote with Gene Roddenberry episode 1 of Star Trek, and so
okay, so they're talking about provable connections between intelligence agencies and Hollywood and the Burning Man festival. So check that out at Logos Media. That's Sheehan's page. Okay, now I'm going to find... Okay, this is what Steve did yesterday, talking about
present evidence, and
Jan
in this
Irvin.
case, the evidence is actually all from me disclosing these things. And I had a very popular software program that was downloaded by millions of people all around the world, and it was widely used. It was used by almost all the Fortune 500 companies, and the CIA bought licenses, FBI. Tons, Army, Navy, Air Force, I believe Scotland Yard might have bought a license in the UK. You know, it's all around the world. People bought the software. You know, hundreds of thousands of people bought the software, and tens of thousands of corporations. So, yeah, that included the CIA. But Jan's edited this video to emphasise me talking about that, and you know, to change the talking so that it sounds a bit more nefarious and stuff like that. And you can see my comment here. Yeah, this is childish, and you have to wonder why my rebuttal is here. Now that comment's actually deleted. So this is what we're dealing with. Someone that, you know, blocks and bans you, talks about you behind you.
Okay, I hate the practice. Anybody that does not allow comments, I don't think that is respectful of debate, dialogue, freedom of speech, intellectual discourse. And evidently it's big news that Gab has released some app or function that allows commenting on anything, regardless of if the person likes it or not. So I'm very interested in that.
Back, and doesn't even give you the right to post a rebuttal to their allegations.
And that includes people who I do appreciate their work, such as Brendan O'Connell talking about Israel's Talpiot program. Brendan, what is the good reason to not allow comments? Don't you think that that would help people promote your work? You know, obviously there's all kinds of things people could critique about me and how I present myself that is not helpful. But making fun of people appeals to ridicule, which Brendan does, and Jan certainly does, and he has no business doing that because he's supposed to be Mr. Trivium, right? He's supposed to be defending core concepts of how to reason and how to speak and debate. And going around and calling everybody that disagrees with you left-hand path Luciferian CIA agents is not a good way to do that, is that?
And remember, Jan's supposed to be all about the trivium method, so you know you can really see from the behaviour that I'm showing in this.
This is
post,
why I'm showing this, because
he's got nothing to do with the trivium. But here's a picture.
This is the whole reason why I'm showing this, because it blew my mind. Like, I made all these comments on the video after watching it for 14 minutes, and then I hit play, and it's like, oh, well, boom, Steve had the same experience. Hundreds of people have had the same experience with Jan, of them being thrown under the bus by Jan after working with him.
Of Jan with Joe Rogan, and you know, basically, I recently.
What do you think about that? Jan with Joe Rogan again. The whole ayahuasca, Terrence McKenna DMT deal was popularized, put on the internet by Jan. Now, anybody that is smoking a spleef the wrong way is the Antichrist. That's just too polarizing, right?
Have published this post about Q, Alexander Kugan and the Council for National Policy. And this is, you know, DeFango coming out saying that he was in Q and invented Q with a bunch of LARPers. Like, what a load of rubbish. I debunked that in part 1. And then in part 2, I talk about, well, what I think is really...
Okay, so it appears to me that Steve is very much pro-Trump. I am not. But again, I don't care. I really don't care about my view or your view. I care about... The only game in town is how can we cooperate, right? Right? So the big punchline in the Joe Rogan, Alex Jones interview was Alex saying, hey, these Pentagon people, they do DMT, mega doses, and they're in there making deals with these alien entities, right? And then I'm looking at like 5G, the network, and how it's so much more powerful. Yes, I understand we're all connected to microwaves and radiation through the solar winds and natural stuff, But no, come on. Obviously, if the U.S. government last year was like, yep, there's cancer risk from cell phones, and then now all this 5G is coming out that's just vibrating our cells to death, we've got to stop arguing about MAGA hats and all this stuff. We're talking literal the apocalypse stuff is happening. Whether it's made up or not, and whether it has always been a part of humanity, doesn't matter, because post-World War II with nuclear weapons, we have very real ways to make that happen. So that's the line in the sand I want to draw. Look, you're either, you know what I mean? Why argue about mini ice age, climate change, global warming? The time for arguing is over. Right? We have a very narrow window before the pressures of economics are going to cause us to start having to defend against our neighbors trying to attack us for food, for our vehicles. So check out Crypto Beast, Steve Outtrim. I'm sorry if I'm like overwhelmed and kind of how I'm talking about this, and I want to be on here and communicating, but not really to have my own show. More to I took some aptitude tests, said I should be a museum curator. I want to curate the internet. I think that paradoxically the number one thing that we who are obsessed autistically with studying all this information, the best thing we could offer is to clean up the ghetto that is the internet. How many times have you gone to a forum for a computer problem, right? It is like, do they pick the dumbest people in the world to work at HP or whatever, customer service? And it's like, no. The only help anybody is people in those forums. They're, oh, have you tried this? Like, the computer tech people are dumber than a box of rocks and like listening to what the people are saying. They just robotically go through this list that doesn't apply for troubleshooting. Stupid. And so we need to create an alternative, a curated internet that has the best of the best, right? Even if you're like me and you're just addicted to this information, I don't want to look at a bunch of dumb subscriptions of like, I'm not interested. Why don't I want to hear the best of the best, and I want it to lead to change in the real world. Here's my reaction to this video. You're saying a lot of valid stuff, Steve, that I will definitely unpack, but at 14 minutes you hit it right on the head. It's either Yan's way or the highway. He pissed me off because I'm a little old nobody addicted to all this far-out info that we truthers don't do anything about. I simply retweeted somebody's post about the spiritual value of Native American culture, and he made fun of that. That struck me emotionally. It's just a total asshole thing to do. Like, he's got a problem that I want to address, and I'm no SJW. You know what I mean? And I am very concerned about a bunch of spiritual New Age garbage that's not helping anybody. But that was just ridiculously out of line to me. Then I was pissed because of Jan, that it was him that I bought the damn Trivium book and go around touting his name in thanks in connection to that bit of self-education. It surprised me that when I debated with him that he clearly used the position that you mentioned where he acts like he is the only person on the planet capable of utilizing logic and everybody else is a left-hand path Luciferian devil worshipper. Steve echoed that phrase, that's what Jan's verbiage is. Obviously, that's a big problem that we have in this alternative education genre where people use their ability to wax poetically about big topics as a way to mask their own behavior issues. You know what I mean? Who watches the watchers? It's the problem with academia. And now all these problems of academia have firmly rooted themselves in this self-education research movement. The whole alt-right kingdom is obviously as autistically retarded as the SJWs they revel in ridiculing. Steve, you're a welcome voice as far as I'm concerned, because you're a professional and you're calm and compassionate amongst kind of a bunch of goofball kooks that a lot of us tend to be in this neck of the interwoods. Then, if you're successful by knowing how to market your computer coding skills, you're attacked as an agent for the Knights Templar by Jan's Inquisition. Jan is a testament to the downside of Christianity that creates this scary guilt, passive aggression, ashamed of his experimentation and promotion of Terence McKenna and the DMT experience. I only had to do DMT once to realize how profound it was, and I'm glad I have the adaptability to be able to suspect that people like Joe Rogan and Alex Jones could very well be agents, but I sure enjoyed their conversation yesterday discussing themes such as military officials using DMT to make deals with clockwork elves, both because of the information that it had and because we gotta lighten up. We gotta have a good time for ourselves and to attract anybody to be with us. Just to be clear, my point is not to rag on Jan, but it is to say that because I am so familiar with being independent and isolated that I feel we should make it a top priority to learn how to network with other valuable people, especially because we may not be able to stand certain things they do while we value others, because it's not very many of us that are even willing to stand up against such dominant corruption. I cannot stand the petty soap opera bickering in the alternative intelligentsia. If Jan wants to play the uber stoic rational card, he should do a better job of handling how he speaks of his fellows. Now, he accused me of being too emotional. Certainly I am. That's the more intelligent you become, the more likely it is for you to be oversensitive, you know. And I sure cursed him a blue streak and just wanted the satisfaction of beating the shit out of him. Okay? Now, my life experience brings me up really close to such a thing, but I don't do that. You know what I mean? But what it is I don't like people being smug and comfortable to think that just because I'm a nice guy, they can push me around. And it is a problem being a nice guy. You certainly do end up last, and there's a whole popular discussion popularized through Grimerica. I forget the author's name, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Jan direct messaged me one time later and asked if I had changed my mind about the value of the Trivium, completely discounting that I certainly had read, absorbed, and value it. What do you think the truther community, this is what I want to hear from Steve, because he is so familiar with the Burning Man scene, and I think we do need to get out in the real world, so I want advice on how we could do that successfully, learning from the problems of the past. What do you think the truther community could do to get out in the real world, since you have a lot of experience with the Burning Man culture, and also to avoid that energy being directed towards trite spiritual consumerism, also known as Gaiam TV, and, you know, yoga balls at Walmart, and women all wearing what is up with, like, who passes this Nazi fashion laws? All women must wear yoga pants. I mean, yeah, God, their asses look amazing, but who cares about their body when their heart is rotten? You know, all women must wear Vans tennis shoes. Like that, talk about mind control. I love Vans. Get me some Vans, but I'm just like, do they all have to wear this uniform at the same time? Fascist, figure it out. Thank you.